kind of finale of my residency, and the main question that I was asking about in my residency really was looking at the reliability of images, how we understand images, and what we understand from images. And I particularly, my own work specifically looks at the moment anyway at newspaper images, newspaper photography, and also images on television and on streamed services that kind of respond to kind of a British context of war, if you like. So I'm looking at images of violence, images of conflict, and looking at how we understand those images. And my method for a kind of trying to gain an understanding, trying to gain a kind of coherence or a sense of these images, is to destroy them, is to take them apart. And in the process, and I'm wondering, and you can disagree with me, or we can have this has been the kind of ongoing discussion that we've been having through the week. I'm wondering if there can be a new kind of coherence and understanding that we can gain by kind of destroying or taking images apart and reconfiguring them, making them again. So that's the idea of the workshop today. My idea really was that we were going to work with images or work with anything we like. The only rules is that you need to either destroy. The title of the residency was 6 Kinds of Absence, and as I've sort of given you, the instructions for this morning are no instructions except that I want you to break an image apart, separate its elements, and then change the image and make a new image. Okay, and it may be that all you do, and quite often a lot of my work, I find myself, I separate elements in all of the work that I do, and sometimes I find myself for months with kind of just components of pieces of work that don't quite go back together. So if you separate out the elements and just take some photographs of them, then that's the way I work, if you like. I started kind of planning this this workshop with this image that we've got here that was taken on May the 25th this year. And I think it's a fairly kind of clear, ambitious image. It has quite a clear message. It's a response. It's actually in Minneapolis, and it is a response to the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis about 2 days before then. And what can you say about the kind of the way that the image is kind of constructed? Because I think destroying images is really about investigating the way they're constructed. You've got your thirds here. You've got your split screen. Your left image and right image. You've got your triangle formation. Do you think that in terms of, so that the photographer is kind of taking an opportunity and seeing that the image works on those kinds of rules, if you like, familiar rules that many images right the way back to the Renaissance works by, or operates by? What about the participants? What are the participants kind of complicit in the creation of that image? Is it naturally, spontaneously occurring, that image, or is there something about a kind of an understanding between the participants? We don't know. Obviously, we don't know any of these things from the image, but we could kind of speculate, can't we, that actually there's a kind of a theatrical element to all newspaper photography, and so that newspaper photography is as much about kind of creating fictions as fictional photography, if you like, or kind of the kind of creative, creating kind of fictional images as well, or staging images, or making theatrical images. That there's a theatre in the kind of reality of a protest. But what I was interested in the way I kind of responded to that image, moving on a little bit and bringing us back to the workshop a little bit. And what I was interested in with this image was the spaces between the protagonists and antagonists, if you like. So that this kind of left frame, right frame. And I thought that the image was very reliant on the space between the two opposing sides, and that there was a coherence in having this left frame and right frame. So I thought, well, let's prioritize the space then, and I did that by cutting out obviously the kind of characters within the scene, and then juxtaposing them onto a very kind of dominant background, and not a background that kind of doesn't recede into the background, but that comes forward. And so you end up with this kind of, you know, it's an image that it doesn't work in a way, because the foreground and the background is jarring in such a way, but the background is kind of brought forward. But in doing that experiment, whether it kind of works aesthetically or whether it's a pretty image or not, what I'm doing is I'm sort of changing the components of that image. I'm kind of perhaps trying to say, well, actually, this image isn't about the characters within the scene. This image is about the scene and the position that the characters adopt within the scene. So you can kind of read or understand the image in many different ways. The main point that I'm kind of was working on was this idea by an article by Hito Style, which is a really good article in this book. And she says images are broken to the point of being unintelligible. So that's the basis. I'm going to flick through this quickly now because I want us to start making some work. So what I did was I took two images. I took an image from a kind of a lifestyle magazine, Feel Good Food, and this woman's made some cakes, which she's feeding to the dog. And I took this image from the Black Lives Matter protest in Minneapolis. And I started just playing around with cutting them up and making an intervention, changing the images in some way. And the way you change the images can be any way you want. So for instance, with the dog and the woman, I just started by getting this idea of actually kind of erasing the dog and the woman completely, and seeing, and then again, bringing forward the background. The background is kind of prioritized. You have these silhouettes. In this image here, I'm sort of basing it on this article where she talks about a man who received a head injury and all he could see was colours and shapes. And so she started thinking about working with images in terms of purely shape and colour, which I've kind of quite crudely done here. So you can work with maybe sort of collage in that way. I've kind of juxtaposed and put together different elements from the images and then just put them on another background image that I found around the house, changing the kind of response. Again, you've got a left frame and right frame, but different characters within the frame. And again, this kind of idea of bringing forward the image of the dog by making it into these bold coloured shapes, if you like. It may be that you want to do something where you kind of use a drawing technique where you kind of just draw on top of images and take the shape, look at the shapes of movements. If you look at the shapes of the movements of these people, you get a sense just from the outlines of what they're doing, what the kind of the kind of performances, if you like. And likewise with this one, you can see that there's some kind of a conflict or battle going on. It's actually some images from a dance that I've traced and laid on top of each other. And then this is an image. What do you think? This is an image from a newspaper from a few weeks ago of a celebration. You can see that it's a celebration, and it's actually when the A-level results scandal there was a kind of an overturn of the kind of speculative A-level results, and I just took lots of images from newspapers of people celebrating. And you don't see the characters, but you can see the celebration in the image. So that's I'll maybe talk to you a little bit about some background in terms of artists that I'm looking at as well, if we get time. This is Martha Rosler, who did a series of collages called Bringing the War Home, which I'll talk about later. But I'm going to come off here now, and oh, I think so. Hang on, stop share, and come back on. So the idea, what I've done today is I've bought 2 newspapers, which I haven't looked at yet, and I was just going to go through the newspapers. This is the book, by the way, Duty Free Art. That's really worth looking at. And I was going to go through the newspapers, and I was going to tear or mark or cut or glue and make a new image out of existing images, or only one image. I haven't decided yet. But as I said, there's loads and loads of any way you want to, really. The only rule is to destroy an image and to rebuild an image, or to take an image apart in some way. It doesn't have to be destroyed. You can kind of tear into it and do something that's quite destructive, or you can do something that's quite careful. I've got my scissors, I've got my tape, and I've got some ideas, but I haven't decided yet, so I feel a little bit nervous. But the main thing is to sort of work to be as kind of spontaneous as you like, and it really doesn't matter. You know, this is about kind of just destroying things and messing around with them in that way. I've noticed in this magazine that there were lots and lots of images of people, women particularly, sitting like this. And so I kind of thought, right, okay, well, I'll start looking then at the kind of the body shapes of women when they're posing, which kind of is kind of full of kind of symbolism, if you like. So this kind of vulnerability. Oh yeah, there you go. And then there's another woman kind of with in that same position with her legs crossed and in the foreground. And in this one, she's looking kind of slightly confused and scratching her head. So I thought I'd sort of work with those shapes and try and kind of create those shapes, if you like. So how I'm going to do that, I think I'll start with, I lost my tracing paper. I think I'll start with kind of tracing those images, I think, and dismantling. I don't want to say destruction, but dismantling is always a kind of, it's always a kind of an intervention in photography that is political in its nature, really. There's a really good quote that talks about a positive process of making trouble. You're not kind of just understanding the image as, you know, on first sight, but that you're actually kind of saying, well, hang on, what's going on there? Well, why is it in that shape? Well, why is she sitting like that? Well, why is it configured in this way? What I'm doing is I found all these, I don't know how well it's working really, but I found all these images of women posing photo shoots, and and a lot of them are doing a similar thing. So I've kind of cut them out, just simply cut them out, and then I've turned them over. I don't know if you can see, and then oops, and then I've turned them over, and to see whether they kind of still have the same coherence, still whether you could kind of, this looks like a woman who is very vulnerable. This looks like a woman who is confused and wearing high heels. But this idea of posing, I thought, whoops, was interesting, and then I've just dropped it on the floor. And I might apply some text as well. But it's that it's all that there's lots and lots of different ways of drawing. And I on one of my artist talks, I talked about using film editing as if it's a pencil, as if it's a drawing tool. And sort of not to be, and if you think about it that way, it kind of demystifies drawing, because often and I feel the same as you about drawing, because I kind of naturally think about it in terms of some kind of representation of something that looks like the thing you're trying to represent, you know, the illusion of representation, which is something that frightens me, not necessarily drawing per se. I wonder if I think most of us are kind of collaging, but and it might be just because that's kind of how how we're all thinking when we're sort of working with magazines, and some of the artists that I've been looking at as well. But there's other ways of kind of intervening in images by just making marks over them or just erasing elements of them, and drawing can be a kind of... I did something where I kind of was interested in these images of women, these posed images of women, and I put the images of the women with their captions for the articles. So sexuality is a journey is this one, and then this one is something about the wardrobe. This one's about if we sit back and allow this president to amplify white supremacy, that's the basis of that argument. And then this one again is I came out to my husband and he came out to me. And what I was interested in was that the whole of this magazine that mostly includes, I was looking at things that are kind of repetitions within the magazine, and one of the repetitions is very staged posed images of women, which I kind of have isolated by cutting out their silhouettes. And the other one was that there were two basic themes in the articles, and one was about white supremacy and oppression of Black people, and the other one was about sexuality and female sexuality, which I thought, well, you know, I've kind of taken those elements out. But I just thank Stryx, have been amazing, Ed and Anna and Carolina. It's one of the best things I've ever done doing this, and so enjoy it next week, Brenda, and I'll definitely come week after.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And thanks for everybody. And can we keep this dialogue going by posting our images up to kirsten.adkins.39 and Stryx_gallery, and then we can continue the share.